I approached my neighbor for assistance with the television. The outcome was truly astonishing. Please remember to give the video a thumbs up, share your insights in the comments section, and subscribe to keep up with our newest narratives. It began on a tranquil Thursday afternoon, the sort where time appears to stretch and linger, defying the usual pace. Having just completed the final folds of laundry, the lingering aroma of lavender clung to my hands as I sank into the couch, cradling a cup of lukewarm coffee. It was meant to be my sanctuary of tranquility. A rerun of Murder, She Wrote was on, indulging my guilty pleasure. Yet, in an instant, accompanied by a flicker and a pop, the television screen succumbed to darkness. Initially, I believed it to be merely a loose cable or perhaps a fleeting power surge. I toyed with the remote, pressing every button that came to mind, even resorting to unplugging and replugging everything, yet nothing seemed to yield results. Merely a stillness. And then there was silence. I've never really considered myself to be particularly adept with technology. I can navigate my way into Netflix with ease and have honed my skills in the realm of online grocery shopping, yet when it comes to anything more intricate than that, I find myself at a loss. Let's just say adventures beyond my usual boundaries. In that moment, Walter came to mind. Walter, my next-door neighbor, settled in roughly 2 years back following the passing of his wife. A serene gentleman in his early 60s, courteous, and perpetually adorned with a soft smile. He largely maintained his solitude, yet our interactions, marked by courteous exchanges over the fence and the occasional assistance with yard work, had fostered a sense of ease that encouraged me to seek his help for a favor. I donned my cardigan, tucked a few rebellious strands behind my ears, and approached, cup still clutched in hand, feeling somewhat foolish for requiring assistance with something so simple. His residence bore a striking resemblance to my own. Unassuming and meticulously maintained, the front garden flourished with delicate blue blossoms whose name always eluded me. I rapped gently on the door. After a brief pause, the sound of footsteps reached my ears, deliberate and measured, followed by the soft creak of the door as it opened. "Hi, Walter," I said, a smile gracing my lips. "I apologize for the interruption, but it seems I've encountered a bit of trouble with my TV, and I was hoping you could spare a moment to take a look." He blinked a few times, perhaps taken aback, but then his expression softened. "Of course," he said, a hint of eagerness in his voice. "Allow me a moment to fetch my shoes." Once we arrived at my house, he paused in the living room, surveying the chaotic tangle of cables lurking behind the TV, while I lingered nearby, making an effort to give him space. "You know," he remarked with a chuckle, "you've got half of Best Buy plugged in back here." I laughed, perhaps a touch louder than was warranted. "That sounds about right," I replied. Before he moved, my son set it up, and I've been too apprehensive to tamper with it. He crouched down, adjusted a few components, and within moments, the screen flickered back to life. The familiar theme from my show enveloped the room, and I exhaled a sigh of relief. "There we go," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Just a loose HDMI connection." "HT. What?" He smiled. "Forget it." I extended an invitation for coffee as a gesture of gratitude, and to my astonishment, he agreed. We settled in the sunroom, the space I maintained with care yet seldom occupied. The waning afternoon light poured through the glass panels, creating gentle patterns on the wooden floor. I admitted, as I handed him a mug, that I rarely entered this space. "It feels like a room designed for someone else's existence." He took a slow sip, gazing out at the backyard. It was nice, tranquil. We conversed for a time about nothing and everything. I discovered that he once taught high school shop class. He shared with me the silence that had enveloped the house since his wife's passing, and how he had taken up wood carving to occupy his time. I found solace in listening more than speaking, and there was a certain comfort in that as well. As the shadows stretched and deepened, an unspoken change settled between us. A quietude enveloped us, not uncomfortable, but filled with a gentle intimacy, the sort of silence that requires no embellishment. He regarded me then, not in a blatant, conspicuous manner, but with a subtle intensity that made me feel acknowledged. It had been ages since anyone had gazed at me in such a way. Truly seen me. Not as a mother, a neighbor, or a widow. It was just me. I cleared my throat and rose, shattering the stillness of the moment. I suppose it's time for me to let you return to your evening. Once more, I extend my gratitude, Walter. My sanity would have unraveled without my shows. He rose as well, pausing for a moment before offering a nod. Any time, he said. You know where I am. As I closed the door behind him, I leaned against it for a moment, my heart quietly racing. It was merely a neighbor lending a hand with a television, or so it seemed. Yet, there lingered an inexplicable complexity beneath the surface. The days that followed unfolded without incident, yet I found myself unable to dispel the peculiar flutter that had settled in my chest. Each time I strolled by the sunroom or scrolled through the TV channels, thoughts of Walter would drift into my mind. Not in a fluttery, youthful manner, but rather like a comforting tune that lingered just out of reach. Gentle, lingering. I never anticipated his return. It had been a singular act of kindness, a simple gesture between neighbors. On Sunday morning, as I ventured outside to care for my roses, I spotted him there, kneeling in his garden with a trowel gripped in his hand, a baseball cap slightly oversized perched atop his head, and a soft hum escaping his lips. I paused for a moment. He appeared serene, as if enveloped in a tranquil realm of his own making. Yet, in that moment, he lifted his gaze and met my eyes. "Morning," he said, a smile gracing his lips. "Morning," I echoed, my palms gliding over the fabric of my jeans. "The tulips are emerging beautifully." He cast a glance in their direction. "Your victories always take the lead. It must be that enchanting touch of yours." I chuckled, even as a faint blush crept to my cheeks. Perhaps it was merely beginner's luck. Each spring, I find myself searching online for pruning tips. He rose to his feet, brushing the dust from his hands. "Hey there, I had a thought. I ended up making quite a bit of stew last night. Would you be up for helping me out by taking some leftovers off my hands? I really don't want it to go to waste." I paused, not out of reluctance, but rather because I craved the companionship. It had been ages since someone had shared my kitchen table, yet there was an inexplicable weight to his proposal that stirred something deeper within me. Yet I acquiesced with a nod. That indeed sounded delightful. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself nestled in his kitchen, a bowl of fragrant homemade beef stew warming before me. The space exuded warmth and familiarity. A few Burr houses perched on the windowsill, while cherished photographs of his children and grandchildren adorned the top of a modest hutch. As we shared lunch, our conversation ventured into more profound territory. He recounted tales of his wife, Helen, their serendipitous meeting in college, her Sunday ritual of baking peach cobbler, and the cruel swiftness with which cancer claimed her. I offered fragments of my own story, memories of my late husband filled with laughter, frustration, and the delicate dance of compromise. I spoke of the stillness that enveloped the house he left, how the silence seemed to weave itself into the very fabric of the walls. In that fleeting moment, our gazes locked, a silent exchange unfolding between us. No words were necessary, no explanations sought, only a profound understanding lingered in the air. Two individuals who had braved the tempests of existence and remained upright, still present, still striving. "Do you ever sense that you're in a state of anticipation?" I inquired softly, uncertain of the impulse that prompted my question. Walter paused, placing his spoon aside, and inclined his head just a fraction. I once believed it was a matter of time. Then it dawned on me that it wasn't merely a thing I was anticipating, but rather a person. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the realization. His tone held no suggestion, no forwardness or pressure, only a simple truth, delivered with a gentle touch. This quality rendered it all the more disarming. Once I assisted in clearing the dishes, I found myself lingering by the door, a moment stretching longer than intended. "Thank you," I said, "not merely for the stew, but for the companionship." He offered me that gentle smile once more, the kind that felt effortless. "You're always welcome here." I nodded, a peculiar ache stirring beneath my ribs. Not quite sadness, but rather something profound, a flicker of hope intertwined with it. As I strolled home, I observed the gentle rustle of the trees in the breeze, the afternoon sun casting its beloved golden hue. There were no grand orchestrations, no bursts of celebration, no sweeping motions, only a subtle awareness that something had changed between us. Something modest, yet undeniably tangible. That night, as I nestled beneath my blanket, the flickering TV cast a soft glow in front of me, yet my focus drifted far from the show. My mind wandered back to that cozy kitchen and the man next door. The following week unfolded with an odd, yet soothing cadence. Walter and I had no formal arrangements. There were no planned dinners or any facade of obligations. It felt more like a silent understanding between us. On certain evenings, I would find him on his porch, surrounded by his carving tools and a steaming mug of tea, and I would saunter over, feigning a casual stroll. At other times, he would leave a handful of tomatoes from his garden or a slice of his latest creation, banana bread, cornbread, delicacies imbued with the essence of time and tenderness. We never spoke of the unspoken bond forming between us, yet it lingered in the air, palpable and undeniable. He had a way of looking up before I even knocked, and I often found myself brushing my hair or changing my blouse before stepping outside. One evening, shortly after dinner, a knock on my door startled me. Walter typically awaited my arrival, and an unusual flutter of nerves coursed through me as I opened the door. There he was, cradling a small wooden box in his hands. "I was working on this," he said, his gaze meeting mine. "And I don't know, I just thought perhaps you might appreciate it." He presented it to me with a certain quiet reverence. It was smooth beneath my fingers, crafted from cherry wood, adorned with a delicate flower etched into the lid, one of those blue blooms from his garden. I traced the contours of the design, my heart racing with excitement. "It's exquisite," I murmured. "Walter, I'm at a loss for words." He shrugged ever so slightly, yet his eyes brimmed with unvoiced emotions. No words were necessary. I welcomed him inside. The house was infused with the warm scent of cinnamon from a candle I had lit earlier, while the lamps bathed the room in a golden glow, creating an atmosphere that felt both soft and inviting. We found ourselves in the sunroom once more, this time with 2 glasses of wine in hand. Though I typically abstained from drinking during the week, tonight carried a certain weight, as if it called for a toast, even if we left the reason unspoken. "You possess remarkable talent," I remarked, gesturing toward the box. He let out a chuckle. "It occupies my hands and clears my mind." "What occupies your thoughts?" I inquired, my gaze averted. A moment of silence lingered. "You," he replied softly. I gazed upward, my heart pounding. There it stood before me. I can't quite articulate what I anticipated in that instant. Perhaps I would have laughed it off, shifted the conversation, or feigned ignorance. Yet, none of those responses came to me. Instead, I replied, "I've been thinking about you as well." We lingered in silence after that, a silence that required no words. The atmosphere felt denser, electric, yet not at all unpleasant. He gazed at me, truly gazed, just as he had on that initial day in the sunroom. This time, I held his gaze. "You know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "when Helen passed, I believed that chapter of my life had closed. It wasn't merely the marriage, it was the bond, the profound sensation of being truly acknowledged." I nodded, grasping more than he realized. I admitted to feeling invisible for years, even amidst a crowd, particularly in those moments. "You're not invisible," he murmured, his voice gentle. "Not to me." And once more, that unspoken truth lingered in the air between us. Unhurried, unforced, simply genuine. He made no move for my hand. He did not lean closer. He remained beside me, occupying the same space, immersed in the moment, bearing the unspoken weight of our silence. When he finally rose to depart and I moved toward the door, A sensation settled within me, one I hadn't experienced in ages. Possibility hung in the air. Before stepping outside, he hesitated, glancing back. "Would you like to come over for dinner tomorrow night?" he inquired. As the thought of peach cobbler crossed my mind, a smile crept onto my face. "I would enjoy that," I remarked. With every fiber of my being, I meant it. As I stepped into Walter's house the following evening, the air was infused with the warm sense of cinnamon and baked fruit. It was one of those gentle, golden hours when the sun lingers low in the sky, casting a honeyed glow over everything outside. He welcomed me with an apron speckled in flour and that familiar, warm smile that had begun to evoke a sense of belonging. "Dinner's nearly ready," he remarked. "But I might need a second opinion on the cobbler," I chuckled as I entered. "That's quite the weight to bear. What if I turn out to be a harsh judge?" Reluctant to embrace the challenge, he remarked, his gaze playful and inviting. The table was arranged with understated elegance, devoid of extravagant embellishments, just 2 plates, cloth napkins, and a modest vase holding delicate blue flowers from his garden. The effort did not shout romance, it murmured it softly, with a sense of reverence. We shared a meal of roasted chicken and green beans with almonds, a comfort food that evoked a sense of time and care. The conversation flowed effortlessly, reminiscent of old friends finally expressing thoughts long held in silence. After dinner, he presented the cobbler, golden and bubbling, adorned with a scoop of vanilla ice cream that began to melt atop it. I savored the bite, my eyes fluttering shut. "All right," I declared, feigning gravitas. "This might just be the finest peach cobbler I've tasted since 1994. Walter chuckled. "I'll consider that a victory." We transitioned to the Lagan room next, where the lighting was dim and the soft strains of an old jazz record floated gently in the air. I settled onto the couch, and he took a seat beside me, maintaining a distance that was intimate yet respectful. Our words were few, but the silence spoke volumes. In the stillness, there lay a soothing tranquility, a serene understanding that envelopes two souls who have ceased to masquerade as mere acquaintances. At a moment, he glanced my way, his voice gentle. "I hope this doesn't come off as silly, but I enjoy your company. It seems effortless." "Indeed." I gazed at him for a brief moment, observing the delicate creases framing his eyes, the serene manner in which his hands lay in his lap, at the man whose subtle gestures had unexpectedly transformed everything. "It doesn't seem foolish," I remarked. "It resonates." "Completely." He extended his hand then, neither boldly nor dramatically, simply presenting it between us, palm up as if posing a question. I placed mine in his. Warm, steady, familiar. We lingered in that moment, time stretching without urgency or the necessity of labels. Gradually, I rested my head against his shoulder, and he exhaled a breath I hadn't realized he was holding. Outside, life marched on, cars whizzing by, a dog barking somewhere far off, the final calls of birds bidding farewell to the day. Yet within these walls, time seemed to stand still, holding its breath for us. A few weeks later, the world outside remained unchanged, as if waiting for something to shift. We continued to inhabit our separate homes, maintaining our individual routines, yet an unspoken connection began to weave through our daily lives. Mornings filled with check-ins, meals shared in camaraderie, and the rare laughter sparked by my ongoing confusion about my cables. There were no grand declarations, no sweeping promises, only small gifts exchanged between us. Strangely, that sensation was sufficient, even abundant. One afternoon, I found myself in my sunroom, the wooden box crafted by Walter perched on the windowsill. It was filled with old letters and photographs, fragments of a life that once seemed distant, yet now felt inexplicably nearer. The sunlight danced upon the lid, revealing the intricate grain of the wood, while the flower carving shimmered in the glow. I reflected on the serendipity of it all, a broken TV sparking a conversation which blossomed into a meal, ultimately culminating in something quietly extraordinary. It wasn't a fairy tale, it was something genuine. At this juncture in life, The real holds far greater value than the perfect.